Bring your selected ones to life. Nobody irritates others more than someone who keeps to themselves. It seems absurd, doesn't it? You would think that people would value someone who avoids drama in a world when everyone gripes about it. However, no. Your self-reliance, your quiet, and your reluctance to engage in pointless rumors. That's precisely what agitates them. This is an odd fact. Individuals despise individuals they don't understand, even if they haven't done anything wrong, according to studies. People don't know what to do with you when you're not asking for attention, disclosing too much about yourself, or broadcasting your life like a street musician with a broken guitar. Are you concealing something? Are you superior to them in secret? Or are you planning a planetary invasion dominance? They are consumed with the mystery. And they conclude that you are the issue rather than addressing their own fears. Let's get started. What makes you the public's worst enemy when you mind your own business? You wouldn't believe how funny and dark the reality is. First of all, your presence reveals their vulnerabilities. They ask themselves, why doesn't this person care about my opinion? Do they have knowledge that I do not? Then, suddenly, self-doubt begins to sneak in. They realize in their hearts that they are not as self-assured as they appear. They are aware that their sense of value is shaped by the judgments of others. However, it's simpler to project that insecurity upon yourself rather than face that painful reality. You must believe that you are superior to them. You must be conceited. You had to be concealing something, because they may have to confront the fact that their confidence is really a facade based on continual affirmation if none of it is true. This is where the irony lies. They would most likely ignore you if you were frantically trying to win their favor. But they are obsessed with you because you don't need it. They examine every action you take in an attempt to identify a weakness, a defect, or something that indicates you are similar to them. It isn't truly hate. It's annoyance. It's jealousy. It's the worry that while you live freely, unhindered, and in charge, they're squandering their energy on things that don't matter. People don't dislike you because you don't bother them, they despise you because you demonstrate to them what life is like when you don't require recognition to feel important. And that is frightening to them. Secondly, they cannot divert your attention. Whether it's drama, gossip, or meaningless arguments, people enjoy diversions. Anything that prevents them from confronting their own reality is what they cling to. However, you deny them that escape when you keep your mouth shut. You remove it. And for that reason, they despise you. As you can see, most individuals are not genuinely interested in solving their issues. All they want is for someone or something to divert attention from them. Because it spares them from having to deal with their own problem, they want to discuss your decisions, your silence, and your life. However, they become irritated when you don't interact, when you remain in your lane, and when you don't offer them something to work with. All of a sudden, they must sit by themselves. And they have been avoiding that horror for years. They are uncomfortable with you being away from the drama. Why don't you want to? Why don't you weigh in on their little disputes? Why don't you have the same level of interest in rubbish as they do? Because it makes people wonder why they care so much in the first place. It irritates them. They conclude that you must be the issue, that you must be dull, and that you must believe you are superior to them rather than admitting that they have wasted their time on pointless activities. You must be concealing something, anything to keep from acknowledging that their continual desire for diversions is only a means of avoiding their own misery. Peace isn't truly what people want. In their confusion, they seek companionship. They don't know what to do with themselves when you don't participate. That's why they hate you. Your silence makes them confront the one person they've been avoiding their entire lives, not because you've done anything wrong. Third, you are an unpredictable variable. People want predictable things. They enjoy putting other people in tidy little boxes. This individual is noisy. This one is timid. There's always rumor about this one. That one doesn't give a damn. It simplifies their lives. However, you become an uncontrolled variable when you don't suit their expectations and mind your own business. And they are uneasy about that. They are unable to define you. You don't respond as they anticipate. You don't do the opposite of what people think you'd do. The social norms they believe everyone should abide by are not followed by you. They become uneasy because if they are unable to identify you, instead of recognizing you for who you are, they are unable to control their feelings toward you. To fill in the holes, someone who simply wants to be left alone begins to make up stories. You must be conceited. You had to be concealing something. You must despise them in private. Predictability is what people live on. They are interested in determining who supports them, who opposes them, and whom they may influence. They have no idea where you stand when you remain impartial and refuse to be emotionally invested in their bullshit. And they take it personally rather than honoring your freedom. They interpret your silence as condemnation. The effort is worthwhile, they tell themselves, the appropriate attire, the flawless online persona, the incessant small chat, the networking, and the frequent updates on their life. However, it makes them ask a question they don't want to answer when you don't take part in any of it. What if all of this isn't really important? They have long held the view that attention is a key indicator of success. That the secret to happiness is to fit in. Perhaps they would at last feel good about themselves if they simply follow the script. However, you continue to live your life as usual, disregarding all of this. For some, the understanding is quite distressing since it suggests that the game may not have any purpose if you can be content without playing it. What have they been doing all these time if the game is pointless? In place of introspection, they also search for an alternative explanation. You must be strange. You must be disconnected. You must be antisocial or resentful. Anything to keep from acknowledging that they have been pursuing a false illusion. Instead of confronting the fact that their efforts have been based on a precarious basis, they would prefer to be angry with you. They are irritated by your presence because of this. You are live evidence that their incessant need to impress others, their sacrifices, and their adhering to trends may not be essential. In reality, they don't despise you. They despise what you stand for. The horrifying possibility that nothing they believe to be important actually matters. The fifth, you won't help them believe their delusions. Humans are confined to their own bubbles. They produce cozy delusions. False friendships. Overly successful. Conversations that were empty and only made noise. And they cling to them as though they are essential to their pleasure. And it does in a lot of ways. Because they will have to confront the reality that many of their connections are fleeting once the illusion is broken. Perception, not fact, is the foundation of their success. Additionally, they associate their sense of self with things that don't truly describe them. For them, it is a problem that you are not participating in this delusion. You make it more difficult to keep up the lie if you don't go along with them or pretend. They look for approval when they boast about their life. They expect agreement when they repeatedly complain about the same issues. They anticipate involvement in their gossiping. However, when you don't offer them any of that, you just nod, shift the topic, or show no emotion. They go into a silent fear. Why don't you support it? Why don't you do your share? Why don't you support the narrative that they have persuaded themselves is true? They see your independence as an assault rather than a sign of self-awareness. They feel uneasy when you deny to support their delusions because it compels them to face something they have been avoiding for years. Their whole social environment is based solely on performance, therefore that could simply be the case. Sixth, they are unable to control you. The majority of individuals are unaware of how much of their interactions are based on subtly controlling behaviors. They try to change the behavior of others around them by using emotional responses, peer pressure, guilt, and even phony compassion. Additionally, it usually works, but not on you. They lose control when you ignore them and don't let their attempts to influence you impact you. You don't respond to what they provoke. Their guilt trips are not something you fall for. Their games are not played by you. And that irritates them to no end. They'll experiment with various strategies. They could pretend to be the victim in an attempt to get your sympathy and attention. They could get hostile in an attempt to persuade you to react. They can try to embarrass you into going along with the crowd. They feel helpless, though, because nothing works. People detest being helpless. They detest discovering that their typical tactics are ineffective against you. It makes them realize that perhaps their power isn't as great as they initially believed, that perhaps they aren't able to control others. They may not have true power in their hearts, but they don't know how to connect with people. Simply a set of actions they have used to maintain control over others. They do the only thing they can since they can't make you do what they desire. They turn against you. They don't call you. You believe you're too good, they say. If they acknowledge that your independence is a strength, they portray it as a weakness. They must confront the reality that they have spent their entire lives relying on trickery. And they never want to acknowledge that. 7th place. It feels like an attack from your peace. Some people are unable to operate in a chaotic environment. To divert their attention from their own internal conflict, they require drama, disputes, hostility, and other distractions. Their thoughts become too loud for them to manage when life is too quiet. Therefore, it feels like an attack when they see you at peace, happy, unconcerned, and not participating in their negativity. It's because your peace emphasizes their lack of it, not because you've done anything to them. What's calming you down? Why do you not respond? Instead of viewing your peace as something admirable, why don't you care about the things that cause people to lose sleep at night? They consider it disrespectful. They begin probing you in an attempt to elicit a response. They'll start pointless disputes, bring up contentious subjects, or try to make you feel bad for not being as emotionally unstable as they are. Like money, gossip is traded, and people use it to socialize and engage in theatrical behavior to remain current. You get more accepted the more you participate. However, you upset the entire system when you keep your distance and don't participate in this economy of fleeting relationships. And for that reason, they despise you. For many people, social interactions are not about making a real connection. They have to do with transactions. They engage in gossiping because it allows them to gain social power. Because it elevates their standing, they create cliques. Because it compels others to do the same, they overshare, creating an illusion of closeness. But when you don't comply, it makes people wonder if these exchanges are really worth it. Perhaps their approval isn't as strong as they believed if you can live without it. They feel uneasy with this realization. They view you as the issue rather than acknowledging that their social dynamics may be based on insecurity. Because of the alternative, they accuse you of being conceited or antisocial. Recognizing the shallowness of their connections would require them to face an uncomfortable reality. Here's the reality, though. Forced engagement is not necessary for a genuine connection. Exaggerated egos and pointless chatter are not necessary. It occurs organically. Additionally, your failure to participate in their attention-seeking culture reveals that they are putting in much too much effort for something that ought to be easy. Your distance from them doesn't make them detest you. They despise you because you demonstrate that social survival need not be a taxing experience, which frightens them. The 9th, you demonstrate the internal nature of happiness. The majority of individuals are always searching for happiness. They believe it will be found in a new lifestyle, a romance, a promotion, or a specific amount of followers. However, they constantly require more, regardless of what they do. Their objectives aren't the issue. They think that rather than being nurtured, pleasure is something that must be obtained from outside sources. And then you have nothing to pursue. You don't care if the world approves of you or not. You're happy with who you are and comfortable with your own presence. And they are enraged by that. Why? Because perhaps they have been pursuing the wrong things. If you can be content without what they consider necessary, perhaps the job was never the source of their pleasure. The romance, the money. It had always been about their attitude. But they choose the simple route rather than considering this. They hate you. They begin to gnaw at your life. Do you really think you don't want more? Are you acting joyful or are you truly happy? Perhaps you're simply too afraid to pursue things. They must think that there must be a problem with you. Because it is too disconcerting to think that happiness is an internal condition that they have always had access to. Their perspective is upset by your contentment. It enables individuals to see that they have been ceding their authority and allowing society to determine their level of happiness rather than taking charge of it themselves. And they tell themselves that you're the odd one out instead of taking advice from you. Because you're pleased, they don't hate you. They despise you for demonstrating that, if they would only stop searching in the wrong places, they too could find happiness. 10th place, their stagnation is threatened by your advancement. It is uncomfortable to grow. It calls for self-awareness, work, and the readiness to let go of outdated routines, convictions, and connections that no longer benefit you. This task is not something that most people desire to undertake. They would like to remain unchanged. Convincing oneself that their current location is enough. Then people see that you're changing. Not that you're boasting about it. You're not making every move public. You're simply leveling up, learning, adapting, and developing in silence. They get anxious because they believe that if you can progress, then they can too. Furthermore, if they are able to expand, their standstill is not the result of external factors. You have an option. Instead of confronting that reality, they transfer their fears onto you. They make fun of your aspirations. They make an effort to bring back memories of your former self. They behave as though your decision to better yourself is a rejection of them, as though your development is a betrayal. Here's the problem, though. True development is individualized. It isn't about proving anything to anybody. They simply feel assaulted because your growth makes them realize how far they haven't come. Since they will have no justification if you change, they want you to remain the same. Because you changed, they don't dislike you. Because your development reveals that they have been choosing to remain stagnant, they despise you. 11th, that you don't require their consent is something they detest. Most individuals spend their whole lives waiting for others to give them permission to pursue their goals, for validation, for acceptance, etc. They've been trained to wait for approval before acting, and they believe that everyone else feels the same way. And then you don't inquire. You don't hold out. You proceed without thinking, without defending yourself, and without first making sure it's okay. Everything they've been taught is upset by it, and they perceive it as disrespectful rather than inspirational. They believe they are who? When people witness you making choices for yourself, that's what they think. They don't know what actual freedom looks like, so they interpret your confidence as arrogance. They don't understand how you can have such confidence in yourself without the approval of others. They start to doubt their own limitations as a result. How come they haven't done anything? Why are they still awaiting permission from others? They strike out at you rather than answer those awkward questions. They'll accuse you of being careless, self-centered, or outdated. On the other hand, you become a mystery when you keep your ideas, goals, and feelings to yourself. People detest riddles, and when they are unable to figure you out, their imaginations get overactive. What are you contemplating? What do you actually think? What do you conceal? They feel entitled to no more than what you provide, which makes their curiosity develop into annoyance. Your restraint, your quiet, and your refusal to divulge too much. All of it makes them crazy. You're not being evasive, exactly. You just don't think it's necessary to share every aspect of your life with the world. However, that restriction feels offensive to them. They see your seclusion as being conceited. They believe that since you are independent, you are rejecting them and that you must believe you are better than them. The fact that they have no control over you, however, is what truly irritates them. They are unable to foresee your response. You don't give them any ammo, so they can't use anything you say against you. They therefore consider it an insult when you don't share their devotion or mindlessly follow their idols. They don't require your agreement with them. You must validate them for them. They must think that the objects they adore are unquestionably magnificent, otherwise, what does that say about them? They are forced to face an awkward dilemma if you don't share their admiration for certain individuals, movements, or ideologies. What if the things they have been idolizing have been incorrect? Instead of confronting that possibility, they direct their annoyance onto you. How could this not appeal to you? How can you fail to see its genius? What's the matter with you? They behave as though you must be lacking something because you refuse to mindlessly follow, as though your lack of interest were ignorance rather than preference. However, they are deeply offended by your freedom. Not having to be a part of a group. Free from the need to emulate what other people find admirable. Free from the dread of independent thought. You have your own opinions, and they don't despise you for it. Your independence reveals that they have been outsourcing their identity to things that may or may not even matter, which is why they despise you. The 14th, they are forced to listen to themselves by your silence. The majority of people's lives are filled with noise, not only actual noise, but also diversions, pointless discussions, and continual approval from others. They act in this way because they are afraid of their own minds. Being alone oneself forces individuals to face their regrets, worries, and insecurities, something they would much prefer avoid. However, you leave them with nothing when you don't participate and when you remain silent rather than adding to their typical cycles of drama, gossip, and forced talk. And they find that scary. Being silent is more than simply not saying anything. It's a mirror. They are compelled to listen to the thoughts they have been suppressing. They have no one to project onto, no distraction, and no outside factor to hold responsible for their unhappiness if you don't participate. They are alone with their thoughts. And that's the worst place to be for a lot of individuals. They hate you for your quiet rather than using it as a chance to reflect on themselves. They call you difficult, too silent, or aloof. They aim to agitate you and elicit a response. Anything to end the quiet that disturbs them so much. However, they are unable to avoid the reality no matter what they do. They are not at ease with themselves, but you are. The fact that you remain mute does not make them detest you. Your stillness reminds them of the commotion, which is why they despise you. They have been utilizing it frantically to escape their own realities. In conclusion, the disturbing influence of self-control. Conformity is expected by society. You demonstrate that independence is achievable without consent, that external approval is a flimsy delusion, and that happiness is an inward experience. You reveal the phoniness of their obsessions, the phoniness of their social dynamics, and the reality that they have far less power over you than they would like to think. This is where the irony lies. Their impatience, gossip, and desperate attempt to figure you out increase with their level of resentment. It's all evidence that you are unique and that you are out of their grasp. The expectations that stifle others do not confine you. The same unseen cords do not bind you. Let them speak, then. Allow them to project. Allow them to struggle to comprehend something they were never intended to understand. Your shortcomings are not reflected in their hate. It demonstrates their limitations. Additionally, it is ultimately their suffering, not yours, to cope with. Don't worry about anything else. Nothing is more powerful than a person who defies authority, so keep developing and disturbing them. Don't keep this message to yourself if it resonated deeply, prompted you to consider it, or even just nod in agreement.